Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Part 2 of Law 6 of the 48 Laws of Power. Court attention at all costs. Now, if you haven't watched part 1, I thoroughly recommend you watch that first. Number 1, for obvious reasons. You're not going to understand what part 2 is if you haven't gone through part 1. And number 2, because there is a very important disclaimer, Shari'i disclaimer, that we have to consider as Muslims. The harms, the vices of seeking fame for the sake of it. Okay? Of seeking fame for the sake of it, as an end result in and of itself. Extremely harmful. So please make sure you go and watch part 1 first, before you watch this part 2. Tamam? Z Warrior Yusuf, alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Solo, IRT, and Elias, alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. CS, appreciate it, my man. Tawheed first. That word in ages. Yalla, we're going to bash this up before Maghrib. Shouldn't take us any longer than 40 minutes, inshallah ta'ala. Again, I'll give my weekly disclaimer that I give with this book, and that is, this book here, 48 Laws of Power, was written by a non-Muslim. It is not divine revelation, and there will undoubtedly be blunders, errors, mistakes in it. Things that you cannot outright take full stop. However, you can arm yourself with this knowledge to protect yourself from those who will use these laws against you. And let me tell you something. I am more interested in the laws of power, not for the sake of accruing power for itself, for in its own right, but because we do so many blunders on a daily basis that cause us to lose the power we already have. To lose the power you already have. So now that I've gone through my my weekly disclaimers that I do with this book, take it carefully. Be careful with it. Take the good, leave the bad. Educate yourself with what other people might use against you, particularly whether maybe you're in a business, whether you're in court. When you are in court, and I don't mean court like you're going to the judge, I mean the workplace, business setting, family, you're in court. You're always in court, and you are the courtier. You are the courtier. Tamam. Yalla. Part 2. Create an air of mystery. In a world growing increasingly banal and familiar, what seems enigmatic instantly draws attention. Never make it too clear what you are doing or about to do. Do not show all of your cards. An air of mystery heightens your presence and creates anticipation. Everyone will be watching to see. Everyone will be watching you to see what happens next. Use mystery to beguile, seduce, even frighten. Observance of the law. Beginning in 1905, rumors started to spread throughout Paris of a young Oriental girl who danced in a private home, wrapped in veils that she gradually discarded. A local journalist who had seen her dancing reported that a woman from the Far East had come to Europe, laden with perfume and jewels, to introduce some of the richness of the Oriental color and life into the satiated society of European cities. Soon, everyone knew the dancer's name, Matahari. Early that year in the winter, small and select audiences would gather in a salon filled with Indian statues and other relics, whilst an orchestra played music inspired by Hindu and Javanese melodies. After keeping the audience waiting and wondering, Matahari would suddenly appear in a startling costume, a white cotton brassiere covered with Indian-type jewels, jeweled bands at the waist supporting a sarong that revealed as much as it concealed. Why did I emphasize that? You see, I never forget this one thing my mom said, and it resonated with me. SubhanAllah. We were walking, me and her, and some woman was scantily dressed. And my mom remarked, such a powerful remark, she said, God, some women really don't leave anything to the imagination. Very profound. Some women really don't leave anything to the imagination. Profound, wallahi. Absolutely profound. I want you to think of a woman, or a man for that matter, but think of a woman. The human body in its naked form is quite ugly. It's quite ugly. Even if you're in shape, the human body in its naked form, just standing there like that, is quite ugly. How do you make the human body look better? Well, you adorn it with certain types of clothing. And her sarong revealed as much as it concealed. And I'm going to get to why this is pertinent later on. I'm simply making the point to you that more is not less sometimes. Sometimes to create that aura of mystery, of wanting to know more, you must conceal as much as you reveal. And I'm going to tie this into niqabis later on. I'm coming. Don't worry, I'm coming. Then Mata Hari would dance in a style no one in France had seen before, her whole body swaying as if she were in a trance. She told her excited and curious audience that her dances told stories from Indian mythology and Javanese folk tales. Soon the cream of Paris and ambassadors from far-off lands were competing for invitations to the salon, where it was rumored that Mata Hari was actually performing sacred dances in the nude. The public wanted to know more about her. She told journalists that she was actually Dutch in origin, but had grown up on the island of Java. She would also talk about time spent in India, how she had learned sacred Hindu dances there, and how Indian women can shoot straight, ride horseback, and are capable of doing logarithms and talk philosophy. By the summer of 1905, although few Parisians had actually seen Mata Hari dance, her name was on everyone's lips. As Mata Hari gave more interviews, the story of her origins kept changing. She had grown up in India. Her grandmother was the daughter of a Javanese princess. She had lived on the island of Sumatra, where she had spent her time horseback riding, gun in hand, risking her life. No one knew anything certain about her, but journalists did not mind these changes in her biography. They compared her to an Indian goddess, a creature from the pages of Baudelaire, whatever their imagination wanted to see in this mysterious woman from the East. In August of 1905, Mata Hari performed for the first time in public. Crowds thronging to see her on opening night caused a riot. She had now become a cult figure, spawning many imitations. One reviewer wrote, Mata Hari personifies all the poetry of India, its mysticism, its voluptuousness, its hypnotizing charm. Another noted, if India possesses such unexpected treasures, then all Frenchmen will emigrate to the shores of the Ganges. Soon, the fame of Mata Hari and her sacred Indian dances spread beyond Paris. She was invited to Berlin, Vienna, Milan. Over the next few years, she performed throughout Europe, mixed with the highest social circles, and earned an income that gave her an independence rarely enjoyed by a woman of the period. Then, near the end of World War I, she was arrested in France, tried, convicted, and finally executed as a German spy. Only during the trial did the truth come out. Mata Hari was not from Java or India, had not grown up in the Orient, and did not have a drop of Eastern blood in her body. Her real name was Margaretha Zell, and she came from the stolid northern province of Friesland, Holland. Interpretation. When Margaretha Zell arrived in Paris in 1904, she had half a franc in her pocket. She was one of thousands of beautiful young girls who flocked to Paris every year, taking work as artists, models, nightclub dancers, or vaudeville performers at the Folie, I don't know how to pronounce this, Bergère. After a few years, they would inevitably be replaced by younger girls and would often end up on the streets, turning into prostitution, or else returning to the town they came from, older and chastened. I mean, you want to talk intersexual relationship dynamics? I mean, it's clear as day there. Again, this is self-explanatory. Obviously, younger girls are going to have a greater appeal to those industries where they lean heavily on the youth and beauty of a woman. But just to emphasize the point, who are the customers of those industries? Men. Men are the customers of those industries. And what does the customer demand? A woman who's in her prime. What is her prime? Youth and beauty at its height. When is it at its height? When she's younger. We digress. You understand the point. For those of you who've been watching me long enough, this is like me telling you that flipping the sky is blue. You know. Zell had higher ambitions. She had no dance experience and had never performed in the theater. But as a young girl, she had traveled with her family and had witnessed local dances in Java and Sumatra. Zell clearly understood that what was important in her act was not the dance itself or even her face or figure, but her ability to create an air of mystery about herself. The mystery she created lay not just in her dancing or her costumes or the stories she would tell or her endless lies about her origins. It lay in an atmosphere enveloping everything she did. There was nothing you could say for sure about her. She was always changing, always surprising her audience with new costumes, new dances, new stories. This air of mystery left the public always wanting to know more. Where are we? Always wondering about her next move. Matahari was no more beautiful than many of the other young girls who came to Paris, and she was not a particularly good dancer. What separated her from the mass, what attracted and held the public's attention and made her famous and wealthy was her mystery. People are enthralled by mystery because it invites constant interpretation they never tire of. The mysterious cannot be grasped, and what cannot be seized and consumed creates power. There's one movie that I still think about to this day, and it still pees me off to this day. And for those of you who have watched it as well, you'll know what I'm talking about. Inception. Did that thumb thing drop at the end of the movie or not? I still think about it to this bleeding day, and I watched that movie 10 years ago nearly. Did it drop or not? Who knows? Mystery, mysterious. And what cannot be, what's the word he used in? What cannot be seized and consumed creates power. I still think about that stupid scene in that stupid movie. I still think about it. Let me tell you something. There are some sisters who wear niqab. Wallahi, wallahi. They look better with niqab. Wallahi. Better with niqab than without it. They look better. Let me say that again. They look better with niqab than without niqab. Yes. Why? Because the niqab, the way that it sits on their face, the way it cups their eyes, it gives them a mysterious look. I wonder what she looks. Her eyes look so good in that niqab. And then you lift the niqab up, half the time is like a flipping. Do you understand? Like God knows what underneath all of that. It's like I'm thinking, you think to yourself, I saw this a lot on my travels. I'm not going to name any particular countries. I'm not going to name any particular countries, but I saw this a lot on my travels, where in certain food courts in certain countries, the sisters would lift their niqabs. I was like, "Oh, fam, bro, you're better off leaving your niqab off." Seriously. Now, I'm not going to get into the discussion is niqab fard or not. I'll leave that for you guys. I'm just saying, some women create more fitna in their looks with their niqab on than off. With the niqab on than off. Because of the way it frames their face, or their eyes, I should say. Maybe she has very long eyelashes, for example, or she does her eyes in a particular way, and it creates this aura of mystery, and men want to know more. When the truth is, underneath, she just looks like, you understand? Niqab fishing. Yeah. Keys to power. In the past, the world was filled with the terrifying and unknowable. Diseases, disasters, capricious despots, the mystery of death itself. What we could not understand, we reimagined as myths and spirits. Over the centuries, though, we have managed, through science and reason, to illuminate the darkness. What was mysterious and forbidden has grown familiar and comfortable. Yet this light has a price. In a world that is ever more banal, that has had its mystery and myth squeezed out of it, we secretly crave enigmas, people or things that cannot be instantly interpreted, seized, and consumed. That is the power of the mysterious. It invites layers of interpretation, excites our imagination, seduces us into believing that it conceals something marvelous. The world has become so familiar and its inhabitants so predictable that what wraps itself in mystery will almost always draw the limelight to it and make us watch it. Do not imagine that to create an air of mystery, you have to be grand and awe-inspiring. Mystery that is woven into your day-to-day demeanor and is subtle has that much more power to fascinate and attract attention. Remember, most people are upfront, can be read like an open book, take little care to control their words or image, and are hopelessly predictable. By simply holding back, keeping silent, occasionally uttering ambiguous phrases, deliberately appearing inconsistent, and acting odd in the subtlest of ways, you will emanate an aura of mystery. Let me tell you, gentlemen, nobody does this better than certain types of women, specifically coquettes. Nobody does this better than them. And a lot of men get twisted up in all sorts of shapes, bent in all sorts of shapes, because some women are really good at playing this game. This is mental warfare, psychological warfare. She utters ambiguous phrases, or she leads you down this way and then down that way, and she confuses you, and you can never quite predict what's going to come next from her. If you've ever dealt with a woman like that before, you'll know what I'm talking about. But if you are talking to a sister right now and this is what you're experiencing with her, I recommend you to simply pull the plug on that relationship, because it's going to cause all sorts of problems for you once you are in the marriage. All sorts of problems. It's very disturbing. It takes your peace of mind away from you. You don't have that raha nafsiyya. You don't have that peace. It's disturbing. You want a relationship that is, for the most part, predictable. And I know predictable is boring. Believe me, predictable is better than up, down, left, and right. Believe me. Yes, sure, I accept. The highs are really high in those types of relationships, but the lows are so low that it's not worth it. Better to have a nice relationship that is predictable enough. Predictable enough. Both artists and con artists understand the vital link between being mysterious and attracting interest. Count Victor Lustig, the aristocrat of swindlers, played the game to perfection. He was always doing things that were different or seemed to make no sense. He would show up at the best hotels in a limo driven by a Japanese chauffeur. No one had ever seen a Japanese chauffeur before, so this seemed exotic and strange. Lustig would dress in the most expensive clothing, but always with something: a medal, a flower, an armband, out of place, at least in conventional terms. This was seen as not as tasteless, but as odd and intriguing. In hotels, he would be seen receiving telegrams at all hours, one after the other, brought to him by his Japanese chauffeur. Telegrams he would tear up with utter nonchalance. In fact, they were fakes, completely blank. He would sit alone in the dining room, reading a large and impressive-looking book, smiling at people, yet remaining aloof. Within a few days, of course, the entire hotel would be abuzz with interest in this strange man. All this attention allowed Lustig to lure suckers in with ease. They would beg for his confidence and his company. Everyone wanted to be seen with this mysterious aristocrat. And in the presence of this distracting enigma, they wouldn't even notice that they were being robbed blind. An air of mystery can make the mediocre appear intelligent and profound. It made Mata Hari, a woman of average appearance and intelligence, I can't read that sentence, too much shit going on here. An air of mystery about an artist makes his or her artwork immediately more intriguing, a trick Marcel Duchamp played to great effect. It is all very easy to do. Say little about your work. Tease and titillate with alluring, even contradictory comments, and then stand back and let others try to make sense of it all. Mysterious people put others in a kind of inferior position, that of trying to figure them out. And why is this such a big? Why do human beings have this need to figure things out? Because something that doesn't make sense to us is we can't stand that. We cannot stand something not making sense to us. Oftentimes, I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I was in my discussion with Brother Muhammad Hijab. He mentioned about my past, have you been hurt, and so on and so forth. And my response to that is my words are chosen very carefully. And that is, if I say yes, then people will walk away and simply say, that's why he thinks the way he does. No need for me to intellectually exert myself and actually understand his arguments, because he's hurt. And if I say no, people will think I'm lying. What's my point? People are always trying to find a reason for why you do or say what you do and say. They need a reason. A lack of a reason is infuriating to them. Preferably the easiest reason I can find. Oh, he's hurt. Who hurt you? You've been hurt. In the case of the types of discussions that you see me having. Point being is that lack of a reason is infuriating to people. They can't stand it. It's really unsettling. They need to find a reason, even if it's a reason that causes them to not have to actually think. It doesn't matter. It's a reason. I can accept that. But when you leave that air of mystery about yourself, you prevent the individual from being able to find this reason with ease, and therefore you consume space in their mind. You consume space in their mind. The best TV programs, I've said this before, do this all the time. All the time. What do they leave you on at the end of each episode? A cliffhanger. Why? So that you can watch the beginning of the next episode. What do they leave you on at the end of each season? A nasty cliffhanger. Why? So that you can come back around and watch the next season. Do you like it? That cliffhanger? No, it's extremely annoying. But do you come back around at the start of the next season? Yes, you do. Yes, you do. That's the nature of a mystery. All great leaders know that an aura of mystery draws attention to them and creates an intimidating presence. Mao Zedong, for example, cleverly cultivated an enigmatic image. He had no worries about seeming inconsistent or contradicting himself. The very contradictoriness of his actions and words meant that he always had the upper hand. No one, not even his own wife, ever felt they understood him, and he therefore seemed larger than life. This also meant that the public paid constant attention to him, ever anxious to witness his next move. If your social position prevents you from completely wrapping your actions in mystery, you must at least learn to make yourself less obvious. Every now and then, act in a way that does not mesh with other people's perception of you. This way, you keep those around you on the defensive, eliciting the kind of attention that makes you powerful. Done right, the creation of enigma can also draw the kind of attention that strikes terror into your enemy. Let's look at this from a more simplistic point of view. I remember listening to a podcast once by Matthew Hussey, Mr. Super Simp Matthew Hussey. And he was saying one of his first relationships, he was really on his grind, on his purpose, really about his grind. And his girlfriend dumped him. And he said, I was never able to pluck up the courage to ask her, why did she leave me? Because, I felt like I was a real catch. But one day I decided, you know what? I need to find out what was the reason that she dumped me. And her response was very interesting. Her response was, you're boring. All you talk about is work. There are no other sides to your character. All you talk about, focus on, obsess with is work. There's nothing else to you. You don't have like any other hobbies or any other discussion points. It's all monotonous, monotone, predictable. I know when you come home, this is what we're going to be talking about. There isn't another interesting side to you. And I find that to be very interesting. You need to have multiple facets to your character, multiple interests. You don't have to dive deep on all of them, but just have other interests outside of your main interest. Be an interesting person to talk to. Have different facets to your character. Sometimes you're, for example, extremely firm and forward and direct. And other times you're more malleable and open and you can listen. You see, sometimes you're funny. Do you see? And then once you develop these multiple facets of your character, you intrigue people. People think, oh, wow, he's interesting. She's interesting. There's lots to learn. There's lots to discover. But if you're just like one track, monotone, one thing, people will bore of you quickly, whether that's in a relationship, work, whatever the case may be. During the Second Punic War, 219 to 202 BC, the great Carthaginian general Hannibal was wreaking havoc in his march on Rome. Hannibal was known for his cleverness and duplicity. Under his leadership, Carthage's army, though smaller than those of the Romans, had constantly outmaneuvered them. On one occasion, though, Hannibal's scouts made a horrible blunder, leading his troops into a marshy terrain with the sea at their back. The Roman army blocked the mountain passes that led inland, and its general, Fabius, was ecstatic. At last, he had Hannibal trapped. Posting his best sentries on the passes, he worked on a plan to destroy Hannibal's forces. But in the middle of the night, the sentries looked down to see a mysterious sight. A huge procession of lights were heading up the mountain, thousands and thousands of lights. If this was Hannibal's army, it had suddenly grown 100-fold. The sentries argued heatedly about what this could mean. Reinforcements from the sea? Troops that had been hidden in the area? Ghosts? No explanation made sense. As they watched, fires broke out all over the mountain. Hit that like, guys. If you're watching this right now, hit the like. Barakallahu feekum. Fires broke out all over the mountain, and a horrible noise drifted up to them from below, like the blowing of 1,000,000 horns. Demons, they thought. The sentries, the bravest and most sensible in the Roman army, fled their posts in a panic. By the next day, Hannibal had escaped from the marshland. What was his trick? Had he really conjured up demons? Actually, what he had done was order bundles of twigs to be, pay attention, to be fastened to the horns of the thousands of oxen that traveled with his troops as beasts of burden. The twigs were then lit, giving the impression of the torches of a vast army heading up the mountain. When the flames burned down to the oxen's skin, they stampeded in all directions, bellowing like mad and setting fires all over the mountainside. The key to this device's success was not the torches, the fires, or the noise in themselves, however, but the fact that Hannibal had created a puzzle that captivated the sentries' attention and gradually terrified them. From the mountaintop, there was no way to explain this bizarre sight. If the sentries could have explained it, they would have stayed at their posts. If you find yourself trapped, cornered, and on the defensive in some situation, try a simple experiment. Do something that cannot be easily explained or interpreted. Choose a simple action, but carry it out in a way that unsettles your opponent, a way with many possible interpretations, making your intentions obscure. Don't just be unpredictable, although this tactic too can be successful. Like Hannibal, create a scene that cannot be read. There will seem to be no method to your madness, no rhyme or reason, no single explanation. If you do this right, you will inspire fear and trembling, and the sentries will abandon their posts. Call it the feigned madness of Hamlet tactic, for Hamlet used it to great effect in Shakespeare's play, frightening his stepfather Claudius through the mystery of his behavior. The mysterious makes your forces seem larger, your power more terrifying. That trick that Hannibal pulled was genius. Absolute genius from a perspective of warfare, setting his oxen alight, and then it created this, like, can you imagine thousands of oxen being set alight and then screaming at the bottom of this mountain, but they can't be visibly seen because it's the middle of the night. And back then, like, people like believed in all of this ghost business. I don't know, we believe in jinn, but it was a lot more it was a lot more of a thing, a lot more of not knowing exactly what it could be. Maybe this is a ghost, maybe this is a spirit, maybe this is the ghost army, the army of the dead. The point is, it doesn't matter what it actually is, so long as your action inspires multiple explanations, multiple explanations, and no one can be said to be superior to the other. This will inspire fear in the enemy, particularly in war, which is exactly what Hannibal did. Image, the dance of the veils. The veils envelop the dancer. What they reveal causes excitement. What they conceal heightens interest. The essence of mystery. Think of, all right, for those of you who are married, think of your wife when she dresses up for you. Does she just come out starkers, naked? I said to you at the beginning of this, the naked body is quite ugly. As in the human body in its naked form is not pleasant to look at. What makes it pleasant to look at? When there's clothing on it. In the case of women, lingerie that flatters their physique, tightens at the waist, has her chest and on display, and then part of it is shown, part of it's not shown. You know what I'm talking about. Do you understand? It conceals as much as it reveals and heightens the aura of mystery of you wanting to unwrap and find out. You guys know what I'm talking about. Authority. If you do not declare yourself immediately, you arouse expectation. Mix a little mystery with everything, and the very mystery stirs up veneration. People will respect you. And when you explain, be not too explicit. In this manner, you imitate the... Okay, no. Anything shirky, I'm just omitting it at this point, guys, all right? Reversal. Now, as you know, at the end of most laws, there is a reversal to the law. A time when implementing the law will be to your detriment, possibly. So let's get into the reversal of this law, or when the law should not be implemented. In the beginning of your rise to the top, you must attract attention at all costs. But as you rise higher, you must constantly adapt. Never wear the public out with the same tactic. An air of mystery works wonders for those who need to develop an aura of power and get themselves noticed, but it must seem measured and under control. Mata Hari went too far with her fabrications. Although the accusation that she was a spy was false, at the time it was a reasonable presumption, because all her lies made her seem suspicious and nefarious. Do not let your air of mystery be slowly transformed into a reputation for deceit. The mystery you create must seem a game, playful, unthreatening. Recognize when it goes too far and pull back. There are times when the need for attention must be deferred, and when scandal and notoriety are the last things you want to create. The attention you attract must never offend or challenge the reputation of those above you. Not, at any rate, if they are secure. You will seem not only paltry, but desperate by comparison. There is an art to knowing when to draw notice and when to withdraw. Lola Montez was one of the greatest practitioners of the art of attracting attention. She managed to rise from a middle-class Irish background to being the lover of Franz Liszt and then the mistress and political advisor of King Ludwig of Bavaria. In her later years, though, she lost her sense of proportion. In London in 1850, there was to be a performance of Shakespeare's Macbeth, featuring the greatest actor of the time, Charles John Keane. Everyone of consequence in English society was to be there. It was rumored that even Queen Victoria and Prince Albert were to make a public appearance. The custom of the period demanded that everyone be seated before the Queen arrived. So the audience got there a little early, and when the Queen entered her royal box, they observed the convention of standing up and applauding her. The royal couple waited and then bowed. Everyone sat down and the lights were dimmed. Then, suddenly, all eyes turned to a box opposite Queen Victoria's. A woman appeared from the shadows, taking her seat later than the Queen. It was Lola Montez. She wore a diamond tiara on her dark hair and a long fur coat over her shoulders. People whispered in amazement as the ermine cloak was dropped to reveal a low-necked gown of crimson velvet. By turning their heads, the audience could see that the royal couple deliberately avoided looking at Lola's box. Deliberately avoided. Pay attention. The rest of the audience, followed Victoria's example, and for the rest of the evening, Lola Montez was ignored. All her magnetic powers were reversed. People would flee her sight. Her future in England was finished. Never appear overly greedy for attention then, for it signals insecurity, just as Lola Montez intentionally entered her box later than the Queen. Why? She wanted to make an entrance. But the custom of the period was that the Queen and the King, or the Prince in that case, the Queen and the Prince come in last. Why? So that they could be the last ones to be noticed, and meaning the front of mind. The last to enter is the one who is in most recent memory. Oh, well, that's the way it goes. But she wanted to usurp the queen. She forgot her place. And then what did the queen do to punish her? Simply ignored her and banished her to oblivion. Like that saying from Balthazar Gracian. There is no revenge like oblivion, for it is the entombment of the unworthy in the dust of their own nothingness. By simply ignoring her, she set the example for the rest of the people to ignore her, and then that harmed her reputation for the rest of her time in England. Never appear overly greedy for attention, and know when to step back. Know when the master has arrived. Whether you like him or not is irrelevant. Timing is crucial. Understand there are times when it is not in your interest to be the center of attention. When in the presence of a king or queen, for instance, or the equivalent thereof, bow and retreat to the shadows. Never compete. I hope I did my best to explain that as best as possible. Of course, there are parts of this book that I have to omit and just get rid of completely, particularly the shirky parts. And like I said, if you hear something that is not in line with the Quran and Sunnah, then simply learn from it to protect yourself of what others can do and use against you. Jazakumullah khair. I'm gonna go get ready for salat. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.